As a girl, I grew up watching fairy tales, and in these fairy tales, I was no stranger to the character, the evil old lady that was doing everything in her power in order to ruin all of the princess's hopes and dreams, essentially. She was the witch, the hag, the crone. The media has always had this really weird, one-sided beef with older women. Sheila Clement says, fairy tales and novels of ages past often show older women as bitter and ill-tempered. The Little Mermaid is a classic example. An old single, hag, is jealous of a young woman's beauty and attempts to steal it. How do you, a young woman, avoid this fate? This horrible, terrifying fate? Oh, well, so glad you asked. You just need to find yourself a handsome young man that'll take care of you, and maybe on the way, you'll buy yourself some anti-aging face masks. Boom! Patriarchy. Boom! Capitalism. And yes, it is that serious. Why? Why does society hate women who show their age? Which is obviously a crazy sentence considering all women, all people, age. So yes, it is only women who show their age, because women who are getting this amazing plastic surgery and facelifts to the point where they literally look like they're 25 again, which obviously, if that's what you want to do, all power to you, but I do think about why do people feel the need to get that, you know? Hello, Editing Ella here. I just wanted to expand a little bit more on the thought of women who do get plastic surgery or any sort of, body alterations, I guess you could call it. I think about, nobody is forcing them to get this. It is them in their own free will getting various procedures. But then when you think about their reasonings behind it, is that they want to look more beautiful, and like all of these different societal standards that we have created that people need to adhere to, and the only way for them to adhere to them as they age is to get these insane facelifts and plastic surgery and stuff like that. And so, yeah, a lot of these people do get it out of their own free will, but it's also societal pressure that makes them feel like they need it. On top of the copious amounts of plastic surgery, women who are showing how many anti-aging or skincare products they buy are also being praised by society. I know you guys have seen those morning shed videos where they've got everything on, and I'm just like, how do you sleep at that? How do you sleep at that? Aging women in media are very frequently accompanied with many highlighted physical changes such as saggy breasts, spotted hands, and wrinkled necks. On top of those features are typically accompanied with the woman being single, old, lonely, single lady. In short, pretty privilege is very real, and if a patriarchal society deems aging bad, women are going to be the ones to pay the price. Essentially, as women become sexually irrelevant, they become useless to society. And unfortunately, this pretty privilege applies to all ages, not just to older women. Why must women maintain their youth, their beauty, while men get to grow old and be praised, essentially? Like, sites such as Reddit or Quora are filled with aging women discussing on how they exist in society, essentially. The short lady said, "I'm invisible." Extra Gouda said, "You go from being young in competition with other women, even if you don't want to be, and sexually harassed, to being treated like a washed-up, invisible idiot." I think it depends entirely on how you age, what you look like, if you can stay thin, and maybe it helps if you are not a woman of color. Sally Haggs says, "I no longer have to deal with being sexually harassed." Comfortable Channel 73 explained how people are very quick to question her whenever she says she's traveling alone at 81. They say, "Who's going camping with you? You go alone? You're going to Seattle all alone? Aren't you afraid?" She exclaims, "No, I'll be with my dog." People assume you're fragile at 81. And it makes me think of my grandparents who are constantly going on trips. They're constantly going places. They just went to Ireland. Or maybe they're in Ireland right now. I don't know, it's on the to-do list. Maybe they haven't even gone yet. On these forums, there was a reoccurring feeling and description about feeling invisible. On the contrary, though, I did find some first-hand positive outlooks on it. Simone Ramon said, "Once you know this, it becomes a superpower." RKS James followed up and said, "Absolutely, it's fabulous." Additionally, as we know, women lose the ability to reproduce as they age. And on Quora, Rebecca Miller says, "Because our society is held up by patriarchy, it only values choose women who are able to reproduce. Since women are viewed as objects, women are considered obsolete when they are no longer considered valuable or able to produce. And I think this is obviously just proven completely true anytime a woman says, I don't plan on having kids, I don't want kids. You know, people get so upset. They get so irrationally angry or just always questioning them. How do you know? Like, what if you meet the right person? Like, you're so young, you still don't know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, they are young. But also, why do you care so much? Another woman who was asking for advice on Quora asked, how do people, especially women, deal with aging? I'm nearing 50 and having a really hard time accepting this. I hate looking in the mirror. I feel useless. Nobody even notices me anymore. If you also had a hard time, tell me how you cope. Dr. Rebecca Wardle continues to discuss about this idea of women feelings regarding themselves aging. Discussing the Featherstone and Hepworth's piece, The Mask of Aging, she says, they cannot reconcile their inner youthful selves with their aging external bodies. This contrast between how they feel and how they look can be disorienting and upsetting. On the inside, they feel great. They're full of wisdom and of experiences that have finally led them to understanding themselves, only for them to look in the mirror and see someone that society has always told you would be unhappy and bitter, essentially. It's a weird thing to grapple with. And as I touched on earlier, many women actually explained how they no longer have to deal with sexual harassment as they age. Amber Wardle talks on this as well. She says, freed from the constant sexual objectification many women experience in our youth, we can all turn our outward focus inward. We can begin healing our hearts and minds, make time for interests we neglected in our younger years, invest in connecting with your loved ones, and perhaps for the first time, we can connect with our innermost parts too. Freedom from sexual objectification is not a symbol of our diminishing worth. It is a symbol for the culture's insanely toxic obsession with youth and beauty. Like I said, those damn morning shed videos, I couldn't No, the double standards of aging. Obviously, not every single man is going to be praised as they get older. Like I said, pretty privilege impacts every single person. So just keep that in mind as I go into this next section. Essentially, though, men don't typically fear aging in the same way that women do, because men are not punished by society as women are. Women are just held to such a high standard, and it's not even just in their elder years. It's our entire lives. When it comes to the media, women are held to such a high standard that one tiny mistake will end their career, while a man can do really, really horrible things, do really horrible, bad, terrible, evil things, still be okay. Whenever the Dixie Chicks criticized Bush's invasion of Iraq in 2003, the country, I mean, mind you, I was one in 2003, but from what I've heard and read, the country went absolutely banana ballistic, which, you know, everyone was very arm in arm after 9/11, so I'm not surprised. The chicks were even referred to as things such as the Dixie Sluts and Saddam's Angels. Okay, shit. Whenever Justin Timberlake exposed Janet Jackson during their Super Bowl halftime performance, and she got canceled over it, basically. Yeah, okay. Oh, okay, that one actually keeps me up at night. Yeah. Sorry, these don't really have to do a lot about with women aging, but just to prove my point. You've all heard the phrases, where's my silver fox? I love a man with a little salt and pepper. I mean, I've heard them on media, and I've also heard them in my everyday life. They're very common. In an interview with British Vogue, Gwyneth Paltrow discussed these topics. She goes on to discuss why women have to maintain their beauty while men get to get older, both physically and mentally. Women's aging is so frequently tied with their loss of sexual and visual allure, while a man of higher age is typically considered handsome and sexy. But I feel like this was really shown in 2014. Hillary Clinton, who I'm not like a stan of Hillary Clinton by any means, but her critics were very quick to claim that she was too old to run for presidency again. Too old? She's too old? That's your critique? She's too old? Can we talk about how these same critics did not have any concerns regarding Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or even John McCain's ages when they ran? Older men are just very typically considered these vats of wisdom, while elder women get labeled as the crazy cat lady. Now, we've already lightly discussed society's obsessions with youth, but tying that into the pushing of product and consumerism is obviously very important, because every single ad these days is how to make you look younger, how to prevent signs of aging. I mean, for Christ's sakes, you will have 14-year-olds on your feed trying to teach you face yoga so they won't have wrinkles. You need to stop. It's always, how do I look more beautiful? This idea of always needing to be more beautiful, despite that many women report that they actually discover an impossible form of authenticity as they exit their 20s and 30s, which should not be that surprising considering your frontal lobe doesn't develop until you're 25. So I don't expect someone to fully understand themselves when they're 14 years old. No, unfortunately, in this capitalistic society, the children are being taught the opposite. Our 30s and over are meant to be the golden years, in my opinion. How does society expect me to have it all together at 22? Why am I supposed to have it together like a 40-year-old has it together? And obviously, I think that also ties into hustle culture, but that's another topic for another day. This idea of promoting youthfulness, it goes back decades. In America's Obsession with Staying Young from Reese Martin, it's discussed that the young adult baby boomers that entered the market in the 1960s that actually prompted media to begin marketing the value of youthfulness. In these marketing techniques, with the inclusion of pop culture, like using celebrities in campaigns, which is very normal to us these days, the consumers were convinced that they could just buy this beauty and this worth through these products. They were convinced that they could be cooler than the generations before them, essentially. Despite this new consumerism outlook on aging, Wardle hammers the point home that aging is healthy and normal, despite the multi-billion-dollar anti-aging / skincare industry wants to tell women. Aging is normal. In a Wired article written by Amelia Tate, she explores the role of TikTok in changing what it means to be old. Kelsey Laurier, a TikToker, explains the comments that she received whenever she revealed her age. One comment read, "Oh, I can't believe it. You look so young." Laurier is 29. She looks young because she is young. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. Why does society these days, they literally believe as soon as a woman hits literally 30 years old, they become decrepit and literally cannot do anything. That is society's view of women, and it is insane. A personal thing that I saw scrolling through TikTok, which almost prompted me to make this video, was Maya Jama, the Love Island UK host. She came across my For You page. The video was of her singing and dancing, and she looked gorgeous, beautiful, like a freaking woman. She looked like a woman. Well, the comment probably didn't have any underlying ill intent. It read, "Is she 40 or 20?" with a crying emoji. Now, Maya responded very nicely. She just said, "In the middle, honey, 30. Why does her age matter?" To me, the underlying message to that comment was, she looks so good for her age. I mean, yeah, damn right, she looked good. She looked good. She also looked like a 30-year-old. She looked like a woman. She looked like a woman. Young girls should not be stressing about how they cannot sleep on their sides because it's going to make their face droop. They should not be worried about that at all. Probably also isn't helping that we have celebrities popping out from the plastic surgeon looking 10 years younger again. What's that phrase? You're not ugly, you're just poor. Now, as I was thinking about the final additions to the script, I realized that I kind of failed to touch on any racism tied into ageism, I guess. Or I guess I should say racialized ageism. People of color are unfortunately forgotten and ignored in all parts of society, even whenever they are younger. So it's not surprising that the pattern continued into the idea of ageism. Irma McLaurin discusses how there's like a complete absence of older black women on the big film screen. And then I think about the black women in the healthcare system who are just consistently mistreated because of these systemic issues. And that's why this intersection of racism and ageism is so deadly. In the piece, exploring the intersection of structural racism and ageism in healthcare, it explains this idea of the structural racism faced by people of color every day in the healthcare system. The lack of access to high-quality healthcare is historically and intentionally excluded urban and rural communities in the U.S. is well documented, and Black or African American individuals are underrepresented as healthcare professionals. Equally problematic is the practice of using race, a social construct, as a proxy to inform clinical protocols that drive healthcare decision-making. Race-adjusted algorithms that use race as a proxy for biological, genetic, or behavioral risk of disease reinforce racial biases and perpetuate health inequities. I remember when I first heard about the racism faced by people of color in the healthcare system, it broke my heart, just because, damn, everywhere. To put that all in layman's terms, essentially it used to be taught that Black people feel pain differently, and so that would impact their healthcare that they would receive. It isn't that they feel anything differently, it's just that these healthcare professionals were racist and they wanted to cause harm to people of color, and unfortunately that was a long-held belief by some people still today. And older generations need more frequent healthcare. Obviously they're older, and so this idea of the intersection of racism and ageism in the healthcare system kills elderly Black people, and it needs to be addressed and corrected. Now, I know I touched on the idea of double standards in aging, but ageism affects both genders. Both genders are devalued as they age. The APA, or the American Psychological Association, says that ageism is society's last socially acceptable prejudice. In 2020, the APA recognized age as a risk factor for discrimination. And if TikTok is any proof, a lot of younger people truly do not see ageism as an issue. Following the Industrial Revolution in the West of the 18th century, it led to a cultural shift where essentially older people became excluded from society because they were seen as unproductive. Especially with the loss of DEI, which will impact older generations, older people are pushed from the workplace quite frequently. With the introduction of the universal pension systems, aging essentially just became a welfare concern. As demands increase for health and social care, which is a human right, and we should not be fighting like this for them. The media is essentially just portraying them as being a burden to society, which is crazy because society's the one that pushes them from their jobs because they see them as unproductive, because then they can't work because they got pushed from their job, and so now they have to rely on society, but then when they rely on society calls them a burden. Got it. In her recent book, Breaking the Age Code, How Your Beliefs About Aging Determine How Long and Well You Live, Dr. Becca Levy, a professor of epidemiology at Yale School of Public Health, as well as psychology at Yale University, she tackles many common stereotypes about aging. In every case, I found information that not only contradicted the negative stereotypes, but also highlighted a strength that comes with aging. I feel like people like to believe that aging comes with less creativity, while on the contrary, Levy found that artists and musicians become more and more creative and more generative later in life, which, as I touched on earlier, I feel like this should be obvious because your frontal lobe does not develop until you are 25, and then by the time you're older, you have all these experiences and life wisdoms. Does that make sense? Life wisdoms that I feel like I'd be able to tell 100 stories over and over again. Something I found as an example of this is his recent movie Megalopolis by Francis Ford Coppola. The people hated that movie. They hated it. And I'm not a harsh critic when it comes to movies. If I had fun, 10 out of 10. Let's go. You could also argue that Francis Ford Coppola is so rich and successful that he can just do whatever the hell he wants, and I know that, but I did find it a good example. Hello, Editing Ella here. I wanted to expand a little bit more on the Megalopolis example because I feel I brushed over it really quickly. While the structure, I guess I should say, of the storyline is pretty similar to some of his other works, just the idea of the New Rome, the alternate 21st century New York, is what I found really interesting and intriguing, and that's why I included it in here, because it felt different and new and fun to me. This idea of the fantasy almost being placed in the context of our world, which is just kind of like an urban fantasy, which I've read before, but that's why I included it. On his Substack, Sherman Yellen discusses the contradictions of aging. One may be shrinking in terms of physical mobility while simultaneously growing in totally unexpected ways. While it is true that some cognitive functions, such as reaction times, decline with age, there are so many positive improvements as you get older. Levy's research showed that older generations are better than middle-aged adults at orienting their attention and ignoring distractions. This part, well, is probably true. I do find it interesting as we look at which generations grew up with the internet and technology and social media, and that's obviously going to impact everything. Additionally, as one ages, they become more agreeable and conscientious as they are better at regulating their emotions. Make a long story short, aging is beautiful. As people are looking for advice on how to deal to aging, people on these sites offered questions to ask yourself, essentially. They said, what are your personal qualms with aging? Why is it distressing you? Do you feel you missed out on certain opportunities, about not taking certain paths? Good news, good news! It is never too late to start pursuing what you desire, because as long as you are above ground and breathing, you have time to do it. Obviously, room for discussion about class issues and how a lot of people genuinely do not have time because of society. But aging shows the life you've lived. It shows the stories and the wisdoms that you've been able to collect. Truly, all you can do is just start with small improvements in your life. Focus on being well-groomed rather than beautiful or handsome. Eat more nutrient-dense foods, work out. Just do some small things and build on those. Older generations and politics. Being aware of your own personal biases, I find, is key to breaking these stigmas, obviously. And I was kind of smacked right in the face with my own while I was researching this. On r/AskOldPeople, Wine on the Patio said, despite the fact that I'm about as politically left as you can be without falling into the ocean, and despite my open mindfulness and so forth, young folks automatically assume I'm a conservative Karen boomer. We grew up as a part of a counterculture that fought stereotypes only to be victimized by new ones. It's a good thing that with menopause comes the inability to care what other people think, or my feelings would be hurt. I grew up in a relatively conservative area, so it was kind of hard for me to not form these biases about older people, but that's why I'm currently, challenging myself and unlearning a lot of things, and that's why I'm making a lot of these videos, is because I'm not an expert on everything, and sometimes this is the easiest way to learn, is to put your thoughts and opinions out there so people can give theirs back. Now, because ageism is harmful, the prejudice around aging is harmful to everyone. Nancy Morrow Howell, a PhD professor of social policy and an expert at gerontology at Washington University in St. Louis, said, the narrative that age is decline, age is burden, hurts everyone, individuals, families, communities, and society. I challenge all of you, as well as myself, that if you see an older person and find yourself assuming things about what they think and believe, now, obviously, if you have the ability or opportunity, I urge you to maybe go start a conversation with them, because in my opinion, I found that a lot of the people from older generations are more than willing to talk about anything. It doesn't even need to be politics, talk about anything. And I feel that is the message that I give in a lot of these videos, to, get out of your home and go talk to people. But truly, these things have ripped community from our hands in a way, and reigniting these community conversations are the ways to fix it. Because with this loss of community, young people have been completely deprived of hearing and understanding the experiences of older people. Again, from 93-year-old Yellen, she said, I can't tell you why. I can't find a single reason for it. But my life in old age feels infinitely larger than it ever did. And when I look out my office window at the marvelous sky that shelters my city, I am delighted to be alive and a part of a very human race. And this is why I love older creators online, because they never fail to share a little bit of hope. They go online and they show that their lives are just as fulfilled as when they were 25, if not more. Some of my favorite older creators are Tina's Talk Time on YouTube. On TikTok, I follow these ladies called the Chips and Salsa Podcast. And as well, if you like fashion, I really like Kirsten Geffert. I'll have them all linked below because I thoroughly enjoy all of their content. I highly recommend going to check them out, as well as engaging with a few older creators yourselves, because you'll never know what kind of lessons you'll learn. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll stick around for some more, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye bye.